Hey friend, it's me Vasco with a quick announcement. We at the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast are organizing this year's Scrum Master Summit. For tickets and details on the summit, check out the URL bit.ly/SM Summit 22. All one word, SMSUMMIT 22. And now, on to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week we have with us a very special guest from Rotterdam in the Netherlands, Jurgen Appelo. Hi, Jurgen. Welcome to the show.
It's me. Hey, Vasco. Great to be here.
So Jurgen is an entrepreneur, an author, and a keynote speaker who applies Agile to his life and his businesses. He's also a prolific writer on all topics business and Agile. He wrote Management 3.0, How to Change the World, Managing for Happiness, and his latest published book, he's already working on another one, on entrepreneurship and product development, is called Startup, Scale Up, Screw Up. We have Jurgen here for this very special week to talk about a topic that he's been publishing about lately. He's going to talk about unFIX.work. That's a link. You can go and check it out. He describes that as organization design for continuous innovation and better human experience. So let's explore that topic, Jurgen. Introduce to our listeners, what is unFIX.work?
Well, I call it Lego for organization design. When I was a kid, I remember I loved Lego and my brother loved Playmobil. I don't know if you remember that contest in families that was often going on, and I was the Lego fanatic in my family because I could make anything I wanted with Lego, and I thought Playmobil was boring because the whole castle was already finished when you got it out of the box and you could just move your figures around. That was so dull. I have a bit of a similar feeling with Agile scaling frameworks. They're more like Playmobil. They're like the castle is already there and you can move things around a bit. And I thought, I want something different. I want to start from scratch, but still be inspired by good patterns out there. So all the patterns in unFIX are known patterns, some better known than others, but I haven't invented anything myself. But the collection is new. The way I present it should be more like Lego than Playmobil. That's the idea.
And for us to get a kind of a sense of what unFIX tries to tackle, because it is quite a wide variety of topics, what are some of the inspiring, either by being good examples or bad examples, but what are some of the inspiring sources for this work on unFIX?
Yeah, so I have borrowed the idea of a tribe. I call it the base from the Spotify model. I borrowed the concept of various team types from team topologies. But I added a few, the governance crew, for example, which I borrowed from Management 3.0. Surprise, surprise. I also borrowed some ideas from organization design theory, actually, where they have already known that matrix organizations don't really work well when we were still introducing them in the Agile world.
Some are still, by the way.
Exactly, where they came up with the front-back model as a really good alternative. So I adopted that as well. So I have a number of sources. And by the way, also dynamic reteaming by Heidi Helfand is a source that I tap into. So there's a lot of inspiration out there, a lot of great people, very smart people doing good stuff. And I try to collect what made sense to me in this new era that we are going into post-COVID. I believe it is all about the experience, the customer experience and the employee experience. Together, I call that the human experience that supersedes that of the product, basically. Because to be honest, we still focus a lot on the product in the Agile community. And I think we should have more of an experience mindset.
Of course, this has been a topic, the product experience has been a topic in the Agile community for a long time. Lean Startup kind of started moving us in that direction. Then other people came in and kind of amplified that trend. But you're also talking about employee experience, and we'll talk about the topic related to employee experience in a second. But tell us a little bit more, what do you mean when you talk about employee experience?
I talk about the idea of belonging, the idea that people don't quit organizations because of a method or a framework or whatever. They usually quit organizations because they don't feel they belong. They don't feel recognized. They don't feel valued. It's not about the productivity that is the issue often. It is about the community that where the big problems are. I try to address that as well. I say that is the main responsibility of management, to create a sense of belonging. And I just realized an hour before I had a chat with someone, and I said during the call, this reminds me of Richard Branson's famous words, who said, "Your job is to take care of the employee, and then the employee will take care of the customer." And that I realized is exactly what I have implemented with unFIX. Is basically an unFIX is the implementation of Richard Branson's wise words. That's manager's job to take care of the workers, and then so that they can take care of the customers.
I really like that approach. I saw it first kind of documented and explored in quite a bit depth in the work related to the Toyota Way. Jeffrey Liker was the author of that book, and then he wrote a few other books that kind of expanded even more on that, like talking about culture and so on. But even in the first book, The Toyota Way, which is a very socio-technical view of Toyota, like, of course, they look at it as a social system, but they also look at the, the detailed processes, the tools, the processes they had in place. But he was already at that time talking about how important it is to design a system for the performance of the humans in the system. It's not the same as Branson said. He was talking about it from the perspective of the performance of the system, but he was talking about learning how to take care of the employees in many different aspects, perhaps not as much in the aspect of belonging that you just introduced, but in a bunch of other aspects, talking about, for example, designing a system to serve the humans in the system rather than designing the system so that the humans serve the system, right? Which is, in many cases, what we are still doing in the industrialized world today, designing factories that need humans to perform, but don't take care of the humans who are in the factory. That's just one example. And we'll talk about one aspect of that, let's call it employee experience, as you call it today, and that is the team composition. You talk about dynamic versus long-lived and full-time versus flexible teams. So let's start with that last one, this full-time versus flexible teams, because we've heard for many years, and Agile was a big, the Agile community, was a big proponent of this idea that teams should always be long-lived and stable. But you have a different perspective. Let's start with that full-time versus flexible. What do you mean by that, and why did you come to prefer the flexible team membership?
Well, different insights there. One is, as I said, the work of Heidi Helfand, who wrote a book on this topic, dynamic reteaming, that I can very much recommend. But she sort of clarified the undercurrent that was already there in my thinking of my own experience. Like, what is full time actually nowadays? Can you define that? Now that everyone is working, or many people are working remotely or in a hybrid sense, and some companies are switching from 40-hour work weeks to 32-hour work weeks, it is harder and harder to define what full-time actually means. There's the movement of results-only work environments, where we just look at the results that people produce and not at how many hours exactly they work. This word full-time is in itself a word from the industrial age, where we paid people to be present for 40 hours in an office or in a factory, or longer in the past, maybe. And then we paid them for that time, and then the managers were responsible for optimizing the productivity that they could squeeze out of those 40 hours, basically. We don't live in that time and age. And another insight I have from a complexity science related book, where they came up with the term networked individualism. Like, in the past, long ago, we lived in tribes, and our family members were also our friends. They were also our neighbors. They were also the people that we worked with. It was all the same, basically. It was one community of maybe 150 people or something like that. they say, anthropologists claim. Nowadays, my friends are not my family. They're not my neighbors. They're not the people that I work with. It's all different groups. And there's a little bit of overlap. Like a cousin of mine also happens to be one of my best friends, but that's rare, actually. So we have these sub-communities that we move in and out of, and this is called networked individualism. That we choose which sub-communities we want to be part of, and we do that context switching all the time. So at this point, I am part of the Agile community, talking with you. I know you from that community. I love that community, but I could switch to the science fiction and fantasy community tonight when I'm working on my book, and I need feedback on my chapters from my peers. That's in a different community that I am in. So we dip in and out of communities, whether it's families or workers or hobby related, and we are actually pretty good at that, having different identities in these different sub communities. And we can have a little bit of the same in organizations as well, where we are participating perhaps not only on a value stream crew, as I call it, that could be a Scrum team or a Kanban team or whatnot, but also we participate in a forum talking about our job, which might be software development or UX or product management, whatever. Maybe also another sub community that is philosophically inclined or whatnot. And we move between these communities. And if we add that to the mix, then what does full time actually mean? I mean, yes, you work for a number of hours on a team that is trying to create value to customers. And in the time that you set aside for that team, you want to focus on that thing, like I focus now on this podcast. But after this is over, I have a coffee or have lunch, and I switch context and I focus on something else in another sub community. There's nothing wrong with that.
So are you saying in practice, like with these examples, I might think that maybe what you're saying is that full time is actually an illusion, that it never existed?
Well, it existed in a concrete sense in the past because we managed people in such a way that they had these commitments of 40 hours per week to contribute to a company. And then they had another commitment to their families and the other commitment to perhaps their friends, but that was less defined. We let go of that 40-hour constraint in practice. We still write contracts like that, but we keep saying to managers now, they just don't look at the hours, just look at how productive people are. Are they offering value? Is the money that you pay per month, does that cover the value that they produce per month? Then it should be fine. Who cares if it was 40 hours or 36 or 51 or 27? It doesn't matter, right? As long as they are focused on the value in the moments that matter when they are with other people, then it is okay. Then we are network individualists. We might have flexible team membership as well.
And I'm thinking, like, for example, you gave an example, which I see actually very often now in product companies, which is this idea that we have the product team who's working on the product, like one product typically, and it has multiple skills involved, like, design, test, development, product, etc. And then we belong to other, we could call them communities that are more practice focused. So we have a community of designers, we have a community of developers. In the development, we even have that more fraction, right? Like we have the Java developers, the JavaScript developers, etc. So one of the things that comes to mind is that from this flexible approach, we are actually increasing the capacity of those focused teams, like these cross-functional teams we talk about in Agile. The fact that we belong to these different aspects, so the team that works on the product and then the team that is focused on the practice, we're actually bringing value into the product team because we share patterns, we learn about what others are doing, and so on. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, definitely. And Tim Harford wrote a fantastic article about that, and did the TEDx talks on what he calls a slow motion multitasking. I believe it is called. So you're focused on a specific thing in the moment, but then you context switch every now and then, a couple of times per day, between different communities, between different commitments, because that's actually a good thing. They know that the best Nobel Prize winners, they were always context switching between multiple domains, for example, because that's how they brought new ideas in that enabled them to come up with Nobel Prize winning advancements in science or whatever. So you need to cross pollinate among communities and get your ideas from other contexts to indeed improve the performance of the product team that you happen to be working on.
Jurgen, thank you very much for this inspiring and also thought-provoking suggestion to focus on flexible team membership rather than only full-time. Hey friends, it's Vasco again, now with a bit longer announcement. I'm part of the team that is behind the Global Scrum Master Summit, the conference dedicated to the Scrum Master role. If you're a Scrum Master, the Scrum Master Summit is the place to learn, to share, and of course to meet new friends. We will have lots of live sessions where you can meet and network with other Scrum Masters from the whole globe. So make sure you check it at bit.ly/SM Summit 22. We have several amazing keynotes and 7 tracks that feature people like you and of course thought leaders sharing their insights, their knowledge, and helping you become an awesome Scrum Master. You can check out all of the details of the summit, including the keynotes announced, the track chairs, and much more at bit.ly/SM Summit 22. That's all one word. That's bit.ly/SM SUMMIT and the numeral 22. I'll see you on the conference floor.